Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to this special Daredevil episode 4 postgame show, talking about the episode that just was. I'm, of course, John Campea. And listen, in case the title didn't make it abundantly clear, we are here to talk about the newest episode of Daredevil. If you haven't seen the newest episode of Daredevil, maybe you shouldn't watch this. Just add this video to a watch later list or something. Come on back. Maybe you don't care about spoilers. That's all good too. But we're going to talk us some Daredevil. Good to have all you guys here for joining me here tonight. And listen, the way we do these post-game shows is if you have a question, observation, theory, comment about Daredevil, and guys, please keep all of your comments or questions tonight completely confined to Daredevil. We're not here to talk about Avengers, unless it's a Daredevil question about Avengers or anything else like that. We're here to talk about Daredevil. Please do that. If you have a question for us, you got to be watching live. And you can use the super chat feature to send it in. I am going to aim to only do the show for about an hour tonight. So I am going to turn off the super chats at some point. But for now, they're still on and available. So if you have a thought, comment, or question, go ahead and fire it on in. And as always, before we get to the questions, I want to give you my kind of thoughts on it. Holy crap. Last week I said this was the best episode of this season so far. It was only out of 3. But I'm going to say it again. This episode is the best episode of the season so far. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but going into the season, I was kind of nervous because of the comments the showrunner was making. It's like, oh, we don't want a show with all this talking. We want a show with action, action, action. It's like, I got worried that, dude, did you not understand what made the original Netflix Daredevil show so great? The action was really good, yes, but what made it great was the talky scenes. It was the drama. It was the characters. It was the depth. That's what made it great. And I got really worried going into this season that he was not going to get it. He was just going to turn it into a Saturday morning cartoon or something like that. Like an R-rated, albeit, but an R-rated Saturday morning cartoon. And it became apparent pretty quick that was something I needlessly worried about. I didn't need to worry about it, right? Last week, it especially drove it home. Now, I saw somebody else in the live chat mention this earlier. But, somebody brought up, and maybe it was a super chat, maybe it wasn't. But somebody mentioned, like, if you had told me that we would have had 2 weeks in a row, episode 3 and episode 4, with no fight scene, well, that would have been concerning. And yet they're the 2 best episodes of the season. I mean, my God, that scene between Frank and Matt in Frank's hideout, and apparently Matt's known the whole time where Frank hides out. So apparently that's been a thing and he's just never gone to visit him. That's fine. But did anybody pick up on that? Like, it was... Matt knew the whole time. Matt's always known Frank has been there and just for whatever reason has just always left him alone. Okay. But he's there now and he's after him, or he goes after him to talk to him. That scene, it rivals. I'm not going to say it was better than the rooftop scene in season 2 of Daredevil. I'm not going to say it was better than that scene, but it rivals it. It rivals it. And may I say, I'm not saying this episode was better than anything in the Netflix series, but I'll say this. The performance of Charlie Cox in that scene with Frank is the best acting we have ever seen out of him. And he's always been a good actor. But that was the best acting we've ever seen. As Frank is yelling at him, say his name. Say his name. And like you can visibly see him starting to break down. No words, just all with his face. All just with his face without even being able to use his eyes because his eyes were being covered by the sunglasses. Charlie Cox managed to deliver the best performance I've ever seen him give in an episode of Daredevil. It was utterly fantastic. And him and John Bernthal playing off each other is chef's kiss. It's magic. It's magic. Somebody saying in the live chat who's saying give them their Emmy. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. It was one scene. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But it was a really good scene, man. It was a great scene. And then when Frank starts saying, you hear his voice, don't you? I'm paraphrasing, but you hear his voice all the time, don't you? Everything you do, you hear him talking to you, blah, blah. I have the same thing with my son. All I hear my son is get him. Like that whole thing from John Bernthal. Like Charlie Cox was the MVP of the episode, but man, John Bernthal in that episode, so good. And, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that scene because everybody wants to talk about that scene. But the scene that's not going to get talked about as much, and I think deserves to be talked about as much, is the therapy scene with Wilson and Vanessa. I liked it before. Like, I really liked the therapy stuff they're doing. This episode, this scene, took it to the next level. Just the whole thing about how they are so in sync. And what is it? What is your world, Wilson? And they say at the same time, business, right? They're so in sync and yet so fractured right now. So in sync and so fractured all at the same time. And it rang so true when she asked to speak to Vanessa privately and asked him, are you safe? Because that's a therapist needs to do that. A therapist, it's confidential, but the moment a therapist thinks somebody is actually might be in physical danger, they have a responsibility to report that stuff. So she had to stop and ask her. And I love the way Vanessa said it because Vanessa is the one person on the planet that Wilson, Fisk, Kingpin even, would never lay a finger on. She could cheat on him and he would never lay a finger on her. That's one of the things that makes Kingpin such an awesome character. He's not just top to bottom pure evil. He's human. And he loves Vanessa. Maybe to an unhealthy degree, whatever, but he loves Vanessa. And that whole scene was just unbelievable. I will take drama like the Frank and Matt scene, like the therapy scene. I will take that over a street fight scene any day of the week. And you know me, I'm an action guy. I love my action. But action is only as good, pardon me, action is only as good as the narrative that is pushing it, right? What do I always say on the show? Action without narrative purpose is just visual noise. I don't care how good your choreography is or anything like that. Action without narrative impetus or narrative purpose is just visual noise. And again, if you had told me we'd have episode 3 and 4 and no fight scenes, I honestly would have been kind of concerned. But now that I saw it, these are the 2 best episodes of the season so far. We had an excellent fight in episode 1. We had an excellent fight in episode 2, but episodes 3 and 4 have been the best episodes. And I guarantee you this. If, let's say a little birdie gave me the upcoming episodes of Daredevil, and I took the fight scenes from those episodes and just showed you the fight scenes before you saw episodes 3 and 4. Okay. So imagine a scenario that you have not yet seen episodes 3 and 4. And I just showed you the fight scenes from upcoming episodes. They would look cool. They'd be really cool fight scenes. But having seen episode 3 and 4, when the fight scenes come, they're going to be all the better. They're going to be all the more rich. They're going to be all the more engrossing and exciting and heart-pounding because we understand the narrative behind it. And I am perfectly fine that we got through episodes 3 and 4. And you guys know I had my doubts. I had my doubts about Born Again going into the season. If you guys watch me, you know I've had my doubts. But this has been utterly fantastic. This has been so good. And even that scene where little soprano Gandolfini, when the Kingpin was starting to come out, I want to know who leaked and blah, blah, blah. And little Gandolfini just comes out, it was me. But see, that whole thing, it plays to the character, because what is the one throughout all the show, even back in the Netflix days, what was the one thing that Kingpin valued above anything else? Loyalty. Above anything else. Anything else. Loyalty is what he looks for. It's what he demands. It's what he craves. Loyalty. And the sheer, it wasn't even groveling. The sheer contrition with that extreme display of loyalty. Like, I'm done. I have no excuse, but I'm going to vote for you no matter what. And I'll go pack my thing, blah, blah, blah. And it was true to the character of Kingpin to be moved by that. It's not like it's not like even Little Soprano's pleading changed Kingpin's heart. His reaction was totally consistent with the character of Kingpin that we've always had. It was a brilliant scene. It was a brilliant scene. And you know what else is interesting? The woman who's kind of managing Kingpin, I can't remember the character's name. If you guys remember the character's name, throw it into the live chat. But like, you would think that a Kingpin would have no time. Sheila. All right. You'd think that Kingpin would have no time for somebody questioning him and holding him back. But Kingpin values intelligence and experience, and he doesn't like it. But he understands he needs this person, for now at least. For now. We'll see if Sheila sleeps with the fishes. We'll find out. But for now, it's something he values. So that scene, incredible. So, like, the scene with Little Soprano begging for his job, Frank and Matt, the marriage therapy thing, then, oh my God, finally, tangibly Muse, right? Sucking his paint out of people's bodies. Finally, I mean, we are 4 episodes in and we're finally just touching on Muse, but that was pretty awesome. Also, White Tiger's niece. Michael Gonzalez mentioned like White Tiger's niece. That was a nice little scene too, to just get things started. And by the way, even the scene with the Cracker Jack thief, the caramel corn thief. Like, what started out, this is something this show is doing really well. Something that seems inconsequential at first leads to a payoff. Because in the first scene Matt is having with this guy in the prison cell, you're like, what's the point of this? This is just a guy who just thinks he just wants to get off, and he totally did it. He's a low-level guy who just keeps committing crimes, and he just wants, like, what's the point of this? And it pays off later, because the next time when he starts talking about, like, I went to prison for something, nothing. I missed my appointment for this, so they took away my food stamps. I can barely eat. And, like, then the one time I just decide I want to eat something that isn't out of a dumpster, now I'm going back to jail again. And it's set, the reason that's there is because it contributes to the moral complications that Matt is wrestling with about his trust in the system, about his choice not to be, not a literal Avenger, but to be an Avenger, not the team Avengers, but you know what I mean? Like, it was all set up to contribute to his moral dilemma and what's shaping Matt right now. And I remember when that second part of that scene, when he goes on and starts to explain about his history and how he has to eat out of dumpsters and all that kind of stuff, and he's going, you could see it in Matt. Again, beautiful performance by Charlie Cox, knowing when to be emotive, when not to be. And even just the stunned quiet of Matt in that scene was extremely telling. Man, I gotta tell you, this is a really good episode. It was really, really good episode. And you can see the cracks starting to form in Kingpin's veneer. And you can see the cracks starting to form in Matt's. We've talked before about how this show seems to be a journey of two parallel roads running side by side. Yes, John, we know that's what parallel means. I'm just saying, of these two parallel roads, one of Kingpin, one of Matt, and man, they are awfully similar. They're awfully similar. And the way it's playing out, with it being so identical, yet on completely opposite sides of the road, I got to tell you guys, it's been really good. Look, I'm not saying, don't misinterpret me. I'm not saying that Daredevil Born Again is on Shogun's level. I'm not saying that. It's not. But it has really exceeded my expectations. It's exceeded my expectations. And this episode, again, I think was the best episode of the season so far. I am just salivating over what all this is building up to. I'm excited for what everything else is coming. And don't forget, oh, actually, Mario just mentioned it too. Don't forget, next week is a bang, bang, double episode week. Double episode week. We're getting episodes 5 and episode 6 on Tuesday. So it's like, oh, what kind of goodness that we got stored up for us. I'm stoked for it. And again, you know what? 54-minute episode tonight. I mean, it wasn't quite 54 minutes because you got to minus the previously on, and then the three some odd minutes of credits that roll. But the stated runtime, 54 minutes. Again, it's nice to see a Disney Plus show finally kind of exceeding that 33-minute episode nonsense, right? Like, we're getting full episodes that have beginnings, middles, and ends. Right? That's been part of the problem with the Disney Plus episodes is all episodes feel completely incomplete because most of the episodes do not feel like within themselves the episodes have a beginning, a middle, and end. You go back and you watch episodes of Sopranos. You go back and watch episodes of The Wire. You go back and watch episodes of Breaking Bad or Battlestar Galactica or Shogun or any of the greatest shows of all time. The show makes up a larger story, yes, but individual episodes themselves need to feel compelling and satisfying by having their own built-in beginnings, middles, and ends. And Disney Plus shows have been very guilty of not really doing that. There have been some exceptions, but for the most part, they haven't. And with Daredevil having the run times that they have, you could do it with shorter run times too. They just failed. But with the runtimes they've had, I have found with Daredevil Born Again that the 4 episodes have truly delivered that. I feel like every episode is just one part of the bigger story, but stories within themselves as well. And it's been executed really well. I've been really, really enjoying this. And, but now we're at the crucible. Now we're at the tipping point. Most Disney Plus shows, almost all of them, start well. Some of them even manage to stay pretty good and pretty interesting for a couple of episodes. We've got 5 episodes left. Am I correct, guys? Correct me if I'm wrong in the live chat. I believe we have 9 episodes in total. 9 episodes, I believe. Yes. So we've just been through 4. So we have 5 episodes left. Let's see if the goodness continues into episode 5 or if we start to see a decline. Fortunately, we're getting bang, bang, double episodes next week. There's a little Cactus Jack for you. Bang, bang. We're, half of you don't even know that reference. Perfectly fine. But we're going to get the double episode. And if they can get over that hump, then I think we're looking good for a strong finish. Because so far right now, I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good about everything we've got right now. So anyway, guys, how are you feeling about it? What stood out to you about this one episode? What are things about this episode that really stood out to you that you loved? Maybe what are some things in the episode that didn't sit well with you? Maybe there's things about the episode that you didn't like. Got some theories about what we're going to see in episodes bang, bang, 5 and 6 coming up next week. Jump into the super chats and let us know because we're going to be turning them off here in a bit. Anyway, let's get things started here, shall we? We're going to pick things up and start with Shane Roxas, who writes, probably recency bias, but that conversation between Frank and Matt, that's where I saw it, rivals the argument from season 2 so damn good. I completely agree, even with your terminology. I'm not going to say it exceeds the season 2 confrontation on the rooftop. I'm not going to say it exceeds it. But at the very minimum, it rivals it. It's comparative to it. It feels like they belong together. And it worked really well for me. I loved what I saw in it, and I cannot wait. Because look, we've all seen the production pictures, right? We've all seen the set pictures that came out a couple of months ago of Daredevil in costume and Punisher in costume side by side in the street, kind of covered in blood. Can't wait to see that. And that scene is just going to building up the narrative fuel for that big sequence that's coming, and it's going to light it all on fire, man. It's going to be great. All right. Next up, Mighty Tank 1 writes, if you had told me there was no action episodes 3 or 4 beforehand, I just said this myself. I wouldn't have been worried, or I would have been worried. Props for making the dialogue so compelling. Yeah, I 100% agree. See, that's the thing. Shows can be, if you're a great storyteller, you don't need action for excitement. If you're a great storyteller, you don't need action to create excitement. This was an exciting episode. I was glued to the screen. And now that you've shown that you can make excitement, you can generate excitement without action, when you do bring in the action, all bets are off. When you do bring in the action, when you've laid this type of narrative foundation, it has the potential to take it to the next level. You know what I mean? So yeah, very excited about it. Very excited about it. All right. Let's see. Could it have been a skull? No. Was that a line in the episode? Anyway, let me address that. You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because there is one thing that kind of bothered me about the episode. One thing that bothered me about the episode. And that is the skull being on the bullet. The skull being on the bullet was ridiculous. Oh, everybody's saying Skrull. That would make more sense. Could it have been a Skrull? No. Yeah, no, he didn't say Skrull. So yeah, Leroy did not say, I don't think he said Skrull. At least I didn't think he said Skrull. I thought he said something else, but maybe he said Skrull. I don't know. Because again, little reminder, we are in the MCU. This show feels so gritty and so grounded and so real that when they do these little reminders that we're actually in the MCU, like he wasn't even wearing his magic talisman, or if Leroy said Skrull, I thought he said something else. But if you guys think he said Skrull, I'll believe you. I'll go with you on that. Then, because that would make sense. Could it have been a Skrull? That would make sense. So that, you know what? Damn it. That's why I like to watch shows. I like to watch shows with the subtitles on. I like to watch with subtitles so I never miss anything. I didn't watch it with subtitles tonight, so I thought he said something completely different. Anyway, could it have been a Skrull? No. Okay. See, again, it's kind of not off-putting in a bad way, but it's kind of jarring when this just feels like a real world show, and then we're reminded that it's actually in the MCU. And that was kind of a little thing about it. All right. Next up, we've got Mary Beth. And Mary Beth writes, The parallel between Matt unable to forgive himself for Foggy and Fisk unable to forgive Adam, maybe even Vanessa, is amazing. These two men are mirrors of each other. They really are. And it's wonderfully portrayed. I really did like to, after the therapist scene, just seeing Kingpin and Vanessa at home talking over the dinner table. And the one thing that's really neat about the Kingpin character, about Wilson, is that he's always honest with Vanessa. Except for what happened to Adam, apparently. But other than that, even with his feelings, he's emotionally very vulnerable to Vanessa. And he even tells her the story. Listen, I learned all this stuff from my dad, who I eventually murdered. But I learned all this stuff from my dad, but the one thing I never learned from him was forgiveness. I'm trying. I thought that was one of the most emotionally honest scenes you could get from a character like that. And I just thought it was great. I thought it was really, really good. And the topic of forgiveness, very, very Catholic topic, right? We talked about that last week, that one of the big things Matt has to fight is not just Kingpin, but Catholic guilt. But that whole scene, but I saw that as also being like more of a mirror with him and Frank has never been able to forgive himself for the death of his family. Just like now, Matt, who maybe he's starting to understand Frank a little bit more because he now realizes he can't forgive himself for Foggy. He may tell himself that he's forgiven himself for Foggy. He may think he's forgiven himself for Foggy, but when Frank really presses him on it, you could tell Matt has not forgiven himself for Foggy. And that's a big thing. And hopefully something that they touch more on as they move forward. All right. Thanks for that, Mary Beth. Next up, we got Black Bono Lala, who writes, Frank and Matt's the best scene. This is how good the episode was. That Frank and Matt scene maybe was the best scene, but it wasn't the best scene by a mile. Like in a lot of shows and in a lot of episodes, that Frank and Matt scene, easily the MVP of the show, easily the MVP of the episode. But like for me, a testimony for how good the episode was, at least for me, was that it was kind of close. I still think the Matt and Frank scene was the best scene, yes, but it was actually close with that therapy scene, with that scene between Kingpin and Soprano Jr., and a couple other moments that I thought were really poignant and really well put together. The scene was great. The scene was great. But again, it's just a testimony to how good the episode overall was. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. All right. Next up, we got Mary Beth again, who writes, I love the focus on the inequality. Fisk is focused on his public image and being seen as working for the people instead of actually helping them, as shown in the BB report and the guy at Rikers. Okay, here's what I'd say to that, Mary Beth. I think there is a part of Kingpin that legitimately wants to do a good job as mayor. I honestly think, even if he's just fooling himself, the way Matt is fooling himself, that I don't have to be the Daredevil, I don't have to be the devil of Hell's Kitchen. I think in the same way that Matt is going through that there's a part of Wilson Fisk that is like, I don't need to be the Kingpin. I can do things differently. I don't think he sees himself as a good guy. Don't get me wrong. But I think there's a part of himself that actually does, he wants to be loved, but he does want to do a good job as mayor. I think there's a part of him that really wants to do that. The problem is, as we saw in the scenes with Sheila or Shelly, what was her name again? I keep forgetting. Anyway, his like right-hand person in that scene with her, where she's like, it's not that easy. You can't just snap your fingers and have it. Like, he doesn't have what it takes to do it the right way. He doesn't have what it takes. He doesn't have the makeup. He doesn't have the DNA to actually get it done the right way. And there's a reason Maybe he'll discover that things need to be done the right way. And there's a reason that those steps and stages are all in place. But he just wants to, screw it. I see that. I can just fix it. Well, I see why in your head, Kingpin, you think you can just fix it. And I think his motivation is that he wants to get it done. He promised the people he would get this stuff done. He's going to do it. But he's also going to break all the rules to do it. And it's starting to frustrate him. And it's starting to show the cracks. Just like with Matt, trying to do things a certain way for the last year is starting to show its cracks. Right? Culture Healers actually just made a really, really good point. Where is it here? Yeah. Oh, no, that's not the one. Oh, this is the one. Kingpin didn't think that the constraints of the system would be so restrictive from accomplishing his goals. And that's the thing. Like what she's trying to point out to him, what Sheila's trying to point out to him is that the process is there for a reason. It's there for a reason. It's not going to be done right if you try to just shortcut all the things. But anyway, it all leads again to why Kingpin is such a rich character to me, right? Is that it's not just a mustache twirling villain. He's a bad guy. He's evil. Make no mistake. But he actually has a love of his life. And I think there's a part of him that actually really thinks he wants to do a good job as mayor. He's just not willing to do it the right way. And it's starting to show and it's starting to wear on him. So it's been pretty cool to see that. All right. Next up, we've got Casinema writes, Fisk, my next official act as mayor is to ban Starship from ever performing in New York City ever again. Can I be honest with you? I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to open myself up here to criticism, and I'm going to be absolutely honest with you. Even I had to fast forward a bit. I couldn't sit and listen to it anymore. We built this city. And hey, all due respect to Jefferson Starship, but I'm like, or just Starship, whatever they were calling I'm like skipping 10 seconds till the music over. I couldn't bear listening to it sitting in my living room. I don't know how Kingpin was able to do it sitting in the room. But man, at the end of it, he started, oh, yes, now we're going to perform. No need. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. That was a really well put together little sequence. I like that a lot. All right. Ryan Holman writes, love seeing Matt and Frank's interaction in this episode. Frank playing the devil on Matt's shoulder, goading him into lashing out and admitting what he has been trying to deny internally. And again, I think one of the really cool things, like when you write a good scene, there's a main point to your scene. But if you write an exceptional scene, secondary and like level B, level C, and level D issues start to get touched on too. And I think one of the subtle things that we miss, and we talked about just a few minutes ago, was not just that Frank was helping Matt realize, again, I think Matt probably thought he had forgiven himself and he's realizing he hadn't. Frank sees it. Frank smells it on him, he said. Frank sees it and he's making Matt realize it too. He hasn't forgiven himself. But I think the other thing that was happening in that scene, and I mentioned this a few minutes ago, is I think that Matt now, more than he ever did in the Netflix series, is starting to understand Frank. He understands Frank now. Now that he has lost somebody dear and special in his life, and he blames himself for it, and he's feeling the things he's fighting so hard to keep down, I think a result of that scene is Matt has a better understanding. I'm not going to use the word appreciation, but a better understanding of Frank and what drives him. Frank and what drives him. Q brings up a good point. That it's a process and evolution that Karen went through as well back in the Netflix series. Karen went through that process as well. And now Matt is going through that process and he's getting it. And I think he may make different choices than Frank did, but it's going to make an interesting process when we get there. All right. Next up, Ryan Holman again writes, also, Frank's line, did Foggy get life? Yeah, that was great. As a contradiction to Matt's reasoning that his conviction and beliefs do work because Bullseye was in prison. Such great writing. Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing. I don't think Matt will ever believe. Matt will never believe that he should have killed Bullseye. He'll never believe that. It's not a part of what he is or who he is. I'm not saying he should believe that. I'm not saying he shouldn't believe that. I'm just saying the way the Matt character has been developed for us, I don't think he'll ever believe he should have killed Bullseye. I don't think he'll ever get to a place that he'll think he did the wrong thing by taking Bullseye in. I mean, Foggy was dead already. But when Frank said those words, just as Matt is breaking down and realizing he has not forgiven himself and he is still all messed up inside and he is still completely broken about it. And now he is feeling the devil of Hell's Kitchen inside of him, kicking at his ribs, begging to burst out and go and start delivering justice to people. It came at a very poignant moment. You know what I mean? It came at a very poignant moment. So yeah, there was that. All right. Next up, we've got Sam Fisher, who writes, I know Cox D'Onofrio's chemistry is outstanding, but Cox Bernthal's chemistry is volatile. There's a reason season 2, episode 3 is the best episode of the OG series. I agree. I think that was the best episode of the OG series. I think that is the best single scene of all of Daredevil. I think it's the single best scene of all of Daredevil, Punisher, Defenders, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, like everything that happened on the Netflix side, that was the single best episode. I mean, you may disagree and find maybe another episode struck you better. That's cool. But for me, that was the best thing of the season. And again, that scene tonight was it just reminded me of how great that episode was, but also it rivals that episode because the conversation was on a different level this time. They weren't just revisiting the same discussion they had before. This time there was some very personal stuff to it, and it felt pretty damn good. All right, let's see here. Next up, Dwayne writes. Oh no, sorry. Billy B writes. Very interesting interview from EW tonight with Bernthal. He revealed that he ended up walking away from Born Again until they decided to reboot it. I haven't seen that interview. I thought I had heard that in the original iteration of it, they weren't going to have Bernthal in it. Or was it the exact opposite? Did I hear he had already shot stuff for the original before they redid it? Anyway, since I have not seen the interview, I can't speak from a place of knowledge on it since I haven't seen the interview. I'll have to go check it out, but I definitely will. All right. Dwayne writes, great episode. Love seeing Frank back and Muse. Yeah, just getting our first taste of Muse. If you guys haven't read his storyline in the comics, I'm going to be very curious to see if they're going to be able to translate just how disturbing of a character Muse is. I've personally read over the years, a lot of villains in comics doing a lot of messed up stuff and all that kind of stuff. But there is something about Muse that is particularly disturbing. And it's going to be interesting to see how well they'll be able to, how true they're able to stay to it, how they adapt it and change it if they do, if they're going to be able to somehow manifest Muse on the screen. Because if they can do him look, it's going to, I keep using the word disturbing. I don't know what other word to use. It's going to be unsettling. Once they start getting more and more into Muse. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they decide to handle it, because I could see them toning it down a bit. I think, listen, and this isn't a Disney thing. I think even if Daredevil was still on Netflix, 100%, I 100% guarantee you, they would tone it down a little bit. I'm not saying they'd fundamentally change it. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying, I think if he was still on Netflix, they would reel it in a little bit. How much they will or won't, now that we live in a world where they have Deadpool and Wolverine, I don't know. It's going to be very interesting to see, though. All right. One more question before we take a quick break here. Sam Fisher writes in again. When Vanessa mentioned Adam was an artist, I thought he would have been Muse. I thought the same thing. 100% I thought the same thing. Welp, I guess we know how Flash keeps getting those bruises. Oh, Fish. You mean, you don't mean Fish or Flash. You mean Fisk. I guess we know how Fisk keeps getting those bruises on his knuckles. Yeah, listen, I am 100%, but you know what? We shouldn't be surprised. I am exactly like you when she started mentioning how he's an artist with his hands. Besides the bow chicka bow bow kind of stuff that went through our head, an artist, is that how we say an artist with his hands? I'm a Picasso with my penis. So, but after that, I was instantly thinking Muse. Oh my God, Vanessa is messed up with Muse. I totally thought the same thing. In hindsight, probably didn't need to instantly go there because we know about Vanessa, she is all about art, right? So it shouldn't surprise us that she became attracted to an artist, right? Because that's her whole background. That's her whole thing, art. So shouldn't surprise us, but I fell into the same trap as you, Sam. I did. I totally fell into the same trap that I instantly thought, and I guess we shouldn't have, I thought she was messed up in Muse. And I still think, by the way, and I could be 100% wrong, I still think at some point this season, Fisk and Matt are going to come to a temporary uneasy truce. And I think they're both going to want to take down Muse. I think that's coming. But I remember when she mentioned the artist part, I thought this is how they're going to team up because Fisk can handle. Okay, so obviously something a little bit different, but I still think at some point they're going to have a temporary uneasy truce. I think, maybe, I don't know. I could be wrong. We'll have to wait and see. All right, guys, listen, we've been going for 45 minutes now, so we're going to take just a quick break here. All right. We'll allow you guys to use the bathroom, grab yourself a drink, have a little chat amongst yourselves for a couple of minutes, and then we'll come back and get to the remaining other questions. I'm going to be turning off, just so you guys know, I'm turning off the super chats in like the next 30 seconds or so. If you have one last thought you want to get in, go ahead and fire it in on now, because then I am turning them off, and then we'll just get through the remainder of the questions that we have. But go ahead, take a quick break, and take a listen to this message from a couple of sponsors of tonight's episode that make this whole post-game show possible. Our friends at Indeed and BetterHelp. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's episode, BetterHelp. Listen, guys, you know if you've been listening to me for any amount of time that I really believe that we need to start prioritizing our mental health. I often compare it to this. You know, when we go to the gym to get ourselves more physically healthy, we see that as a positive step. We need to start looking at our mental health the same way and prioritizing our mental health. And that's where BetterHelp comes through. Therapy should feel accessible, not a luxury just for people who have lots of money. With online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to everyday stress. If you want to look at the numbers, traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up fast. But with BetterHelp online therapy, you can save on average up to 50% per session. Your mental health is worth it, and now it's within reach. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/Campea today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Campea. We want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's episode, Indeed. Okay, so you just realized your business needed to hire somebody like yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy, just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs helps you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for the right candidates so you can reach the best talent faster. And it works. Indeed's data shows that sponsored jobs get 45% more application than non-sponsored jobs. The thing I'm impressed most with Indeed is how fast it makes hiring. When I was looking to hire somebody for the John Campea Show, the process felt slow and overwhelming. I hate it. I wish I had used Indeed. And you want to know how fast Indeed is? In just the minute that I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed worldwide. So don't wait. Speed up your hiring now with Indeed. And for listeners of this show, you get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Campea. Just go to Indeed.com/Campea and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed here. That's Indeed.com/Campea. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. And thank you to our friends at Indeed and BetterHelp for sponsoring tonight's episode of the Daredevil postgame show. All right, guys, with that down, let's get to the remainder of your questions here, shall we? Just a reminder, I have turned the super chats off, so all the questions we're going to get to now are the ones you've already sent in. So let's get to it here, shall we? We left off with Sam Fisher. Now we will get to Mr. I, who writes, I love this show. Creepy reveal of Muse. Yeah. Plus, who thought we needed Frank Castle? Punishing therapy. It was kind of therapy for Matt, wasn't it? He had a breakthrough. What was that scene in Good Will Hunting? It's not your fault. No, it's not my fault. It's not your fault. I know it's not my fault. It's not your fault. But kind of the opposite. It is your fault. It is your fault. Yeah. Therapy with Punisher. That's what they could have called the whole thing. It was great. It was great seeing him pop back up. And again, I mentioned it, but I still find it really interesting that Matt has known where Frank has been this whole time and has just never gone and dropped in on him. Like, I just thought that was kind of interesting. Anyway. Next up, Sam Fisher writes, one of two. There's going to be a moment where Helen is talking about her session with this unconventional couple using fake names because they know each other so well. Matt is going to know the client is Fisk based on the story context without names. You know what? I really don't think so. Because she is clearly a very pro-professional. And as a very pro-professional, she's not going to discuss details about her clients. She's just not. So I think Matt will discover at some point that a couple of her patients are Wilson Fisk and Vanessa. He'll discover it, but I don't think it's going to come from her revealing things about her sessions with clients, because that would make her, quite frankly, a very bad therapist. That would make her a very, very bad therapist and a very bad person to discuss, even without using their names. It would be very, very inappropriate for her to do it. So that ain't going to happen. But he will discover, but that's not how he's going to discover, I don't think. All right. Mr. I writes, how many people are confusing Latvia with Latveria? I couldn't believe, I actually got, where's my phone? I don't have my phone in here. I actually got a text message from somebody said, they actually mentioned Latveria. I'm like, cause they started watching the show like 2 minutes before I did. So I was a little bit behind them. I'm like, what are they talking about? Then I'm watching the show and it's like, dude, they said Latvia. They said Latvia. I may have misheard when they said Skrull, but I know they said Latvia. They did not say Latveria. Latvia is a real country that's really out there on the map. Go check it out. But yes, a lot of people thought they were getting into Doctor Doom. They are not. Now listen, we are in the MCU, which means since Doctor Doom is coming in this world of the MCU, Latveria is going to be a real place, but they did not say Latveria. They said Latvia. just to be clear, they said Latvia. All right. Next up, our friend Murray Reich writes, did I hear correctly the word Skrull? I had the same thing in that interrogation scene. Also, was great seeing Frank again. Show is great. Hope the MCU finale curse ends. Oh, I completely agree. But yeah, I didn't think they said Skrull. Again, this was the first episode of Daredevil Born Again that I was watching without the subtitles on. And okay, I'm embarrassed to admit this. But I'm going to admit it because I'm always real with you guys. When it's popular, when it's unpopular, when it makes me look good, when it makes me look stupid. I'm always real with you guys. I'm going to be honest with you. Okay. You ready? Don't mock me for this. I'm trusting you. This is emotional trust here. Don't mock me for this. But when he apparently said, could it have been a Skrull? I thought he said squirrel. Which I admit makes no sense. Why would the convicted criminal say maybe it was a squirrel? Thank you, Billy B. I'm not alone. Billy B also thought he heard squirrel. Okay, so I'm not alone here. I'm not alone here. Admittedly, why the fuck would he say squirrel? That makes no sense whatsoever. So I went, that's a weird thing for him to say. Why would he have thought it was a squirrel that did it? So it makes much more sense that he said Skrull. It makes way more sense that he said Skrull. But I thought at the time, I'm just admitting it, I thought he said squirrel, and I just thought, that's a weird thing for him to say, and then I just moved on with the episode, and I didn't even think about it again, until you guys brought up the fact that it was Skrull, which makes way more sense. Makes way more sense. Anyway, all right, thanks for that, Murray. Yeah, and yes, apparently, he said Skrull. He said Skrull, because Skrulls are real in this world. All right, let's see, Joshua Logan writes, I thought he said squirrel, okay? Whatever. Joshua Logan writes, he's finally back. I'm so glad to see John again. Frank and Red at it again. That scene was so emotional and a similar vibe we had from the original Rooftop scene. Can't wait to see more. You know what the other thing that was very different from the original Rooftop scene? On the Rooftop scene, they were adversaries. Right? I mean, they may have been on the same side of the angels versus the devils and all that kind of stuff, but they were clearly adversaries. They did not like each other. And what I got out of this scene was the language was harsh, but these are two guys in Frank's own weird, twisted way. What Frank was saying were the words of somebody that cares about the guy. Frank, to a degree, in his own weird way, he cares about Matt. He respects Matt. Behind all the bravado and the tough talk going back and forth between them, the difference between that scene on the rooftop and this scene in here was this was a scene between two guys who have gone to war together. They respect each other, and in their own ways, actually care in their own ways about each other. And that was the big fundamental difference between the two scenes. Not that that makes it better or worse than the other scene. It's just that that's what made it unique and different. And it was really, again, just really, really well done. I thought it was great. All right. Next up, Keaton Havoc writes, that Frank scene had me in tears. This is what writers should study for emotional action. Again, listen, how do I put this? When you fall into the trap that Marvel fell into, and whether it was Bob Chapek's fault or whatever, of producing too much content. When you produce 3 projects a year, you get to pick your 3 best sets and groups of writers that are available to you to work on projects. When you work on 6 projects a year, you now have to hire 3 more groups of writers that you wouldn't have hired before when you were just doing 3. Because you got to pick your best 3 sets and groups of writers. And now that you're doing 6, Well, I guess now we'll take our 4th pick, 5th pick, and 6th pick of groups of writers. You know what I'm saying. Writing, a great director can take a questionable script and make something decent out of it. A bad director can take a great script and make it into a crappy movie or a crappy show. But good writing is the first building block, right? And when you look at a show like, say, Echo, or let's go to She-Hulk. That's a more extreme example. When you look at a show like She-Hulk that had all the promise in the world, great premise, the foundational idea of the show was great. You got you nailed the casting. You got perfect casting. But for a legal procedural comedy, you got writers that didn't know how to write legal procedural or know how to write comedy. And you ended up with a show that had so much potential fall completely on its face. On the other hand, hey, listen, I don't care what the fuck anybody says, drama. The twerking scene is one of the rare, very few great scenes of the show. One of the great scenes of the show. I don't care what anybody else says. Anybody, I think, who didn't appreciate that twerking scene doesn't have the first idea about the comic book version of She-Hulk. Because if you know the comic book version of She-Hulk, that twerking scene was 100% in character. 100% in character. If you don't understand that that's totally a She-Hulk thing to do, then you've probably never read a She-Hulk comic. I'm just saying. Because most people who are hardcore She-Hulk comic book readers, will be the first one to say, that's totally a She-Hulk thing. That is absolutely a She-Hulk thing. There are only 2 or 3 redeeming things about that hot mess of a show, but that twerking scene was one of the redeeming things. Anyway, that and the walk of shame that Matt did. That was a side quest. Sorry about that. Anyway, now you take Daredevil Born Again and you see what really good, thoughtful writing can do. And honestly, I think that's just like both Daredevil and She-Hulk, great ideas, great premise, very, very different. One legal procedural comedy, one darker, gritty, street level thing, but still both great ideas, great concepts, perfect casting, all that kind of stuff. The stage is set. One, on Daredevil's side, you get writers who really know their character, who are being really thoughtful and diving into all that kind of stuff. And on the other one, you had a legal procedural comedy with writers who didn't know legal procedurals and clearly didn't know comedy. And the writing sets it apart. And the writing so far, it may come off the rails, but the writing so far for this Daredevil series has been excellent. I'm not going to say the best, but it's been excellent. And I'm eating it up so far, guys. I'm eating it up so far. Let's see. Next up, we got Vaz, who writes, was I supposed to feel bad for the caramel corn guy? I did not. Guy was acting like a real douche. He was acting like a real douche. No doubt, 100%, he was acting like a real douche. Also, that Frank and Matt dialogue fire. I think, Vaz, I don't know that the point of it was to make us feel bad for him. Because you're right, he was acting like a douche. 100% he was. Which is why in the first scene when Matt was talking to him, I'm like, what's the point of this? What's the point? But like most good writing does, the second time Matt's in there and talking to him, it forces us just to look at it from a bit of a different perspective. And what Matt saw was not, I forget the name of the character. Let's call him Leroy for argument's sake. I think somebody said his name was Leroy. I'll just go with that. The point of that was not that, Leroy's actually a really good guy. That wasn't the point of it. The point of it was Matt, who is a character who had decided when Foggy died to put all of his faith 100% in the system. And he's realizing the system inadvertently sometimes makes it harder for certain people than it does for other people. And the system clearly hadn't helped Leroy. Now, you can make the argument that, hey, well, Leroy made the choice to get himself in trouble. All 100% true. But what Matt recognized was that even if this guy made mistakes before and he doesn't want to make any mistakes again, the system is set up in such a way that it's kind of putting him in a position where he needs to make more mistakes. That becomes debatable. But the point was, it wasn't supposed to make us feel bad for Leroy. It was supposed to have us understand that Matt is continuing to see that his choice to put pure faith in the system as it is, he's recognizing more and more that maybe it doesn't work. Now remember, we're talking about from the perspective of a fictional comic book character, Daredevil, right? But I think that was the point of the scene. Not, oh, we're supposed to feel bad for this guy. They went out of their way in the episode to say he's got like a 10-page, 20-page, rap sheet. So clearly they weren't trying to make us feel sorry for him. But it was to get us to the point where we're recognizing that what Matt is seeing is that a system that was kind of failing this guy. That even if this guy didn't want to be a pain in the ass anymore, and he didn't want to get in trouble anymore and all that kind of stuff, his food stamps get taken away. He's eating out of gutters and now he's just trying to figure out a way. I mean, it's just supposed to give us a different perspective, I think. And I thought that was part of the good thing about the writing, but that was just me. All right. And as somebody's pointing out, Leroy still went to jail. He still had to go spend time in jail. Anyway, next up, we've got Steph S. who writes, Frank and Matt's dialogue put this episode over the top for me. Plus the we built this city gag with Fisk had me dying. Episode 2 of no action. Wow. And again, I think that's been a common theme for a lot of us talking about this episode was who could have dreamt we'd be talking about a Daredevil series. Oh, the Daredevil with the hallway fight scene. And we go 2 episodes in a row with no fights, and they're the best episodes so far. Again, it's amazing what great writing can do. And I totally believe the action's coming. And the action's going to be all the more richer and all the more exciting and all the more thrilling and all the more heart pounding because of everything that's happening in the show so far. So, but we'll see how it turns out, Steph. All right, next up, Captain Dr. Hawkeye Pierce writes, do you think Sister Maggie, Matt's mom, from season 3 will make a return? I don't think so. They set her up to be a sort of a mentor figure, but she hasn't been seen / referenced since. And I think because of that, I think that's a clue that that's just a part of the show that they're moving on from. Like, I don't think they need to revisit everything. And I mean, look, I'm not going to say it's not possible. Of course it's possible. My guess, and it's just a guess, my guess is they won't. I think that's going to be one of the story things that they kind of feel like they can leave behind. But you never know. You never know. It could be something that they do. All right. Next up. Where are we at? Spencer Smothers writes, I love the duality between Matt and Fisk. Both are fighting their nature to live their new lives, but at the end, both indulge behind closed doors. Yep. And to a degree, I think both of them are indulging behind closed doors, but I think they're both doing it begrudgingly. Wilson didn't want to find out Vanessa was cheating on him. He didn't want there to be a guy that was sleeping with his wife. I don't think he wants to be guys doing that. But hey, listen, he hasn't killed him. There's still that bit of restraint. Matt didn't ask to have 2 cops jump him in that apartment and try to kill him. He never wanted that. So while there is some indulgence, I think we're still at the point where they're indulging begrudgingly. But again, the cracks are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I think it's going to lead to bigger things. I mean, obviously it's going to lead to bigger things because we've seen Matt in the Daredevil costume, so it's coming. All right, thanks for that, Spencer. Next up, Rylan writes, I also just realized that they did confirm Frank knows Matt is Daredevil. Yes. Don't remember if they ever revealed that in the Netflix show, but liked seeing it here. Now, granted, it's been 7 years since I watched the show. It's been 7 years, but I do believe he did know who he was. Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, it's been 7 years. But I thought he did. Wallcroft is saying they did reveal in the Netflix show there's a whole scene in court where Frank recognizes Matt's voice. Okay, yeah, I thought he did. Yeah, I thought he did. So there's that. All right. Next, we've got, thanks for that, Rylan. Next, we got Shane Roxas, who writes, Fisk was about to start wrecking kids if he heard we built this city one more time. I'll tell you what. If he got through mouthy police commissioners and a guy sleeping with his wife and an assistant in the office who leaked sensitive information, if Kingpin could have gotten through all that while kind of holding it together, but the final fucking straw was a bunch of kids and he just literally got up and said enough, and he starts picking kids up and throwing them around the room, that would have been gold. I can put up with the police commissioners. I can put up with Matt. I can put up with Daredevil. I can put up with this kid betraying me, even though he didn't mean to, but he did. I can put up with my wife cheating on me, but this I cannot take. That if he got up and started doing the double-fisted smashing kids and blood splattering all over the walls, all while the actual song from Starship, we built this city, which Kingpin is running through the room, ripping kids in half and tearing off their heads. We built this city on rock. And he's killing kids everywhere. That would have been the thing of television history, my friends. The thing of television history. Anyway. All right, next up. We've got Seconds from Disaster, who writes, Daredevil is more than just the suit and fighting. I don't need a lot of it if the writing is consistently this good. Just sprinkle in great fight scenes. I agree. Now, listen, I'm not going to lie. I'm an action guy. I do like to see great fight scenes and choreography and all this stuff. I'd like to think that in 9 episodes, we'll get at least 5 good fight scenes in 9 episodes. That's what I would like. But I completely agree with the premise of what you're saying. When your writing is this good, you don't need action to generate excitement if your writing is on point. And their writing has been on point, and they've made the show exciting. The last 2 episodes have been exciting to watch, and there hasn't been an action sequence yet. And if they can keep that up and start to sprinkle in fight scenes as well, I mean, we're in for something that I never would have thought possible. My highest hopes for Daredevil Born Again was just to be a good show. That was it. I didn't need it to be something exceptional. I didn't need it to be great. I just wanted it to be a good show. Just be good. So that when it was over, we could all go, hey, that was pretty good. You know, I would have been happy with that. That was my highest expectation and my highest hopes. If they can keep this momentum going, we're going to be talking about a season that rivals, I'm not saying exceeds, but we're going to be talking about a season that actually rivaled the seasons on Netflix. And I'll be honest with you, I never thought that was possible. I really didn't think that was possible. So we'll see. The writing has just been pure excellence. And if they can continue that and start mixing in some more of the action, stuff like that, we're going to be talking about a season of Daredevil that truly belongs with those other 3 seasons. They truly belong in the conversation with those other 3 seasons. And again, like I said, that is just something I didn't think they'd be able to do. So they're on their way to doing it. Let's see if they're actually able to stick the landing. That's the hardest part, is sticking the landing. Nobody proves that more than Disney Plus, that sticking the landing is the toughest thing. So we'll see if they're able to do it. All right. Next up, we've got a $20 super chat from Corey Kelly, who writes, thank you for supporting us on that level, Corey. Appreciate that. And Corey writes, this might have been the episode that got me hooked. So many answers on why some things have happened so far with the therapy and Matt's grief. Both are wearing masks. I nearly bawled with that Frank and Matt convo. This again, this goes back to what is something I was saying a little bit earlier, Corey, which was that I've learned in this show, nothing happens without a reason. Right? That even when a scene, like the first scene with Leroy, I'm like, why are we wasting time on this character? It's a nothing character. It's just a guy who's got a long rap sheet, stole some things and wants to get off. Why are we wasting time on this? Oh, because a little bit later, they have another scene where Matt is now talking to him and Matt starts to realize this is, again, another strike against his armor of the system is failing. The system isn't working all the way through and all that kind of stuff, right? You know, Rob and I had a conversation on the John Campea Show last week where Rob and I were both kind of saying that one of the things that isn't working for us is the little documentary cutaway things where they're talking to the average man on the street. Well, I wish I could be a vigilante, you know, that sort of thing. But one of the things I said to Rob when we were talking about that was, I've got a feeling that all these little clips, this little documentary man on the street interview stuff, I have a feeling it's all building up to something later, because so far, everything that they've done in this show, we find out either a few minutes later or one or two episodes later have had a purpose, and they actually are laying the foundation for something else. And I think you're right. I think a lot of things, in this episode were payoff. Some stage setting too. There even in this episode, there was some stage setting, but we're starting to get different perspectives. We're starting to get a bigger perspective of what's going on. And that's one of the things they've just done really well with this, Corey. And again, thank you so much for the question. And thank you for supporting us on that level, man. That's very, very generous of you, dude. All right. Next up, we got Robin, who writes, I'm predicting next week is the bank robbery that leads into the suit. Yeah, I think the suit is coming. But here's the interesting thing. You know, I was having this discussion the other day. Daredevil, unlike a lot of other characters, Daredevil is not some alternate identity thing. Like, you can have Billy running around and we don't see Shazam, right? It can just be all Billy until Billy says Shazam, and then Shazam is there, right? We can see Moon Knight, where Oscar Isaac is just running around trying to figure things out and blah, 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 blah. But then Moon Knight emerges. And now Moon Knight's there. The thing about Daredevil is that with or without the suit, it's always Daredevil. We see that at, like, say, for example, at the end of episode 2, when the cops decide to jump Matt in the apartment. That ain't Matt. He may not be wearing the suit, but that's Daredevil. Whatever he's doing, he's always the devil of Hell's Kitchen. He may not act it out, but you jump him in somebody's apartment wearing the suit or not, that's Daredevil. So it's not like we've been going through the show having not seen Daredevil, but I do think you're right. I think next week, when we're getting the bang bang double episodes 5 and 6, both dropping next week, back-to-back episodes, can't wait. It's going to be great. I do think that's going to be the episodes somewhere next week, somewhere in those 2 episodes, because we saw Matt tonight, right? Matt went into his storage closet to look at his Daredevil helmets, right? He keeps holding on the broken ear, but he's got like 18 other sets of headgear in there, but whatever. So I absolutely agree with you. I think next week is when we're going to see, like, for instance, that scene, that behind the scenes pictures we've seen of Punisher and Daredevil standing together in the streets. I think that's coming next week. Whether it's episode 5 or 6, I think that's coming next week. I could be wrong, but I think that's what's coming next week. Let's see. Next up, we've got, who do we got? We got Sir Z, who says, something you said last week, John, about Foggy being in season 2 being flashbacks. I'm in agreement. I think Matt's reaction to Frank regarding Foggy confirms he's dead. No. What it confirms is that Matt believes he's dead. Now, I'm not saying I think Foggy's going to be alive next season. I mean, Foggy is going to be in season 2. They've announced that. But whether it's going to be in flashbacks, we've seen other TV shows do that, or a figment of, like Harry is to Dexter. Maybe he becomes a figment of his imagination, or whatever, or he's actually alive. They've done that in the comics. But I think what this scene established 100% certainty of is that Matt believes Foggy is dead. It doesn't establish beyond any shadow of a doubt that Foggy is dead. It establishes 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt that Matt truly believes Foggy is dead. So maybe he is dead. Maybe he's not. Maybe in season 2, he's resurrected. Maybe in season 2, he was never dead at all in the first place. Maybe in season 2, it's just flashbacks. All that's still on the table. But that scene with Matt doesn't confirm that Foggy's dead. It just confirms that Matt believes he's dead. So we'll see what they're going to do with that moving forward. Anyway, thanks for the insight, Sir Z. Appreciate it, man. All right, next up. We got Zach Stenbeck, who writes, you said recently that season 2 of Daredevil might be Matt trying to form a team similar to the Defenders. Could Punisher have a chance on that team? Yeah, we were talking today. I don't know why I hit that button. We were talking today on the John Campea Show that there's a rumor, and take it as a rumor. That's why when we did it on the John Campea Show, we start off with that rumor mill graphic, right? It's rumor. But the word going around, and that some outlets are running with, is that there's a rumor going around that season 2 will have one of its primary stories revolving around Wilson Fisk putting together an anti-vigilante task force and Daredevil assembling his own team. Now, that could be, if they did do it, it'd probably be like a new version of the Defenders. I don't think it'll be the Defenders because I don't see Iron Fist coming back. But you never know. You never know. So maybe it's Colleen Wing coming back. Maybe it is Punisher joining that team. Punisher isn't really a team kind of guy, but I could see Punisher playing a role, right? So whether we have Jessica Jones coming back or Luke Cage coming back or Blade, for heaven's sakes, who knows? Could Punisher, I'd say this, I have a hard time imagining Punisher would be part of a team, but I could see Punisher being a part of the season. So again, it's just speculation, just pure speculation on my part. We'll see how they go with it. All right. Next up, we've got Gnome, who writes, my bet is episodes 5 or 6 will focus heavily on Muse. I agree. I mean, clearly, listen, they waited until episode 4 to really introduce us to Muse. And even then it was just a loose thing, right? Okay. We get a few seconds of him carrying a guy, a few seconds of him putting him down in the tunnel somewhere. And then a quick shot of him drawing blood out of him into a bucket. That's not really a full introduction, but they waited until episode 4 to even give us that much of a look at him. They're going to have to pick up the pace now. So I think you're right. Listen, I think we're about to get a full hour and 30 minutes next week, minimum. I think when you add episodes 5 and episode 6, I think we're getting a feature length film time, like a good solid 90 minutes next week. So I think you're right. I think one of the things that they will cover, and there will be several things they cover, but I think one of the things they're going to cover is Muse and a lot of Muse, I think. All right. Last question of the night comes to us from 24K Logan, who writes, How do you feel about the Snowfall spinoff news, guys? Told you, not discussing anything else other than Daredevil. Said that right up front, and so I'm not going to be addressing that question right now. Anyway, guys, that's it. For those of you out, we turned off the super chats a while ago, so just, that's it for that. Now, I am going to take a few extra minutes, even though we're already like 25 minutes overtime. I am going to take a few questions from you guys in the live chat. If you have a question in the live chat, see what I just put in the live chat there at the bottom? Write in all capital letters, question, : then your question. That way I know you're asking me a question. Just going to let you know, I'm not going to read them all. I'm just going to pick a couple here quickly and address a couple. So we'll see how they go. Let's see. First up, we got Q who writes, do you think the Muse kills Heather Glenn would make sense for her not helping him when he asked for it, assuming he is the guy from the book signing? Well, that's not what happened. She said yes, and I believe gave him her number. Now, whether or not he ever reached out, I mean, look, it is very plausible that because she's Daredevil's girl and she's tied in with Wilson Fisk and all this kind of stuff, that maybe she becomes a target of Muse, 100%. But it won't be because she refused to help him, because she did offer to help him, right? Unless I'm not remembering the episode correctly, she did offer to help him. So, we'll see where they go with that. Let's see. Next up, Nicholas 2020 says, what do you think Fisk is going to do with Adam? I'm glad you asked. You might think I'm wrong. I think he's going to let him go. I think he's going to let him go. Now, not just open the door, see you later. Maybe he puts him on a plane and says, I'm flying you to Latvia on a plane filled with children singing, We Built This City. And it says, if you ever show your face in this country again, I'll have you hunted down and killed. But I believe he lets him go. And the reason I believe he lets him go is because of that conversation he had with Vanessa. Said, forgiveness is tough for me, but I am trying. And ultimately, he did promise Vanessa that he would not kill Adam. Remember, Vanessa didn't ask, please don't hurt Adam. She asked him in one of the first episodes, don't kill him. And I believe he will not kill him. I think he's going to let him go. Again, not scot-free, consequence-free. I think he's going to send him out of the country and say, you can never come back to this country. You can never communicate with Vanessa again. If you ever do, I'm going to hunt you down. We're going to kill you. Going to rip off your toes. I'm going to feed them to whatever. But I think he's ultimately going to let him go. At least that's what I think he's going to do. All right. Let's see here. Where are we at? Where are we? Okay. Gabriel Zavala writes, question, Daredevil versus New York City Cops round 2 in future episodes, given Crooked Cop and Matt's interaction? 100%. 100%. That's not over. That's not over. I mean, even if you did think it was over before this episode, the very fact that they had that conversation and said, maybe for me and few and the guys, or like maybe again, so you better bring more guys than last time, all that kind of stuff. Oh yeah, it's coming. It's coming. How it's going to take shape, what form it's going to take, under what circumstances it's going to happen, I'm not sure yet. But yeah, that thing's definitely coming. All right, guys. And that'll do it for tonight's episode of our Daredevil post-game show here, a little after show that we do, talking about episode 4. Guys, thank you so much for being here. And listen, if you're one of the people who's watching this video after it's been live, what did you think about the episode? What are some things that really stood out to you that you loved? Maybe what are a couple of things that you didn't like? By the way, last thing, I forgot to mention this. Forgot to mention it. The one thing I didn't like in the episode was the Punisher symbol on the bullet. 2 things of why that's stupid. I've been saying all this great stuff about the episode. Yeah. But this thing was stupid. Because number one, who takes the time to put intricate little things on every bullet? But the second thing is, why would you put your symbol on a bullet if you're a cop, if you're walking around with the same symbol tattooed on your neck, like we saw some of the cops do, tattooed on your wrist. Like, why would you go, okay, let's go kill this guy, but let's make sure we put our symbol on the bullet. Yeah, that's smart. So unless somebody's trying to frame those cops, maybe that's the way they're going with it. So, but I thought that was kind of, I saw that and I went, come on, give me a break. Give me a break. So unless there's somebody out there who's trying to either A, frame Frank, or B, frame those cops, which they might do. But if it turns out it's actually one of those cops putting the symbol he literally has tattooed on his neck or on his wrist or whatever, that's going to be one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. But anyway, we'll see. Okay, guys, that'll do it for tonight. Thanks a lot for being here. Hey, guys, make sure you come back and join us for the John Campea Show tomorrow. It's going to be me, Robert Meyer Burnett, Chris Carr, John, Ray. Everybody's going to be here. It's going to be a full house. Hopefully, you guys will come back and join us for that. And, of course, we will look forward to next week when it's the Bang Bang doubleheader episodes 5 and 6, dropping at the same time. We'll do our after show after that as well. I'm sure that's going to be loaded as well. So thanks a lot for being here, guys. Big thank you to all you guys who sent in the questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to discuss. But number two, you supported this channel as we did it, and all of us involved with the show. Thank you guys so much for your support. So that'll do it for me for tonight, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.